You know, when we think about war stories, our minds usually jump to epic battles and famous generals. But sometimes, the most incredible history is hidden in plain sight, tucked away in the simple, handwritten lines of an old military ledger. And today, we are cracking one of those open. And this is the central mystery right here. Think about it. In an age where life expectancy was way shorter and being a soldier was just grueling, backbreaking work, why on earth would a man pushing 60 sign up to be a private? Just let that number sink in. 57. And remember, we're not talking about a general or some high-ranking officer. This was the age of a brand new recruit, signing up for the tough life of a common soldier. It's just a wild detail that absolutely begs for an explanation. So, who was this man? His name was Private John Kemp. And to figure out what he was thinking, we have to become historical detectives. We're going to piece together his journey using the actual documents he left behind in the archives. And here it is. This is the primary source itself, his enlistment record from October 1780. The details are just fascinating. He joins the King's Rangers, which was a Loyalist unit, so he was fighting for the British crown. He's 5'5", and there it is, right under age, an estimate of 57 to 60 years old. This isn't just a guess, it's right there in the official paperwork. Okay, so we know he's in, and now the records let us start tracing his path. We can actually follow his journey from his post in New York all the way up to Quebec during those final, really critical years of the war. The paper trail shows us a really clear progression. He signs up in 1780, spends the next couple of years in British-occupied New York City, which was their main headquarters. Then, in early 1783, he gets transferred north to Quebec. His time in the service officially ends when his unit is disbanded in late 1784, a little while after the war was over. But what was he actually doing all that time in New York? Well, a soldier's life wasn't always about big battles. For someone like Kemp, it was probably the essential day-to-day grind of an occupying army. You know, standing guard, going on patrol, finding supplies, and protecting key British positions. And this is where the story gets really personal. When Kemp was transferred up to St. John's in Quebec, it turns out he wasn't alone. He was reunited with his two oldest sons, Joseph and James, and his stepson, Francis. And get this, they were all serving in the exact same unit, the King's Rangers. This was truly a family affair, a multi-generational commitment to the crown. But here's the thing. As we dig deeper and deeper into these records, something really strange starts to emerge. A weird kind of silence. The documents are great at telling us where he was and when, but there's a huge piece of the puzzle that is completely missing. Exactly. This is the issue. When you hear soldier's story, you expect action, right? But in all of John Kemp's official records, there is no mention of a single battle, not one skirmish, not one military engagement. So, what's going on here? And this chart just lays out the puzzle perfectly. On the left, you have all the facts we know for sure. Dates, locations, even his family members. But on the right, a total blank where you'd expect to see his combat history. This absence, this void, that's the real clue. So why the radio silence? Well, history actually gives us 4 really solid clues. First, he joined pretty late in the war after a lot of the biggest battles were already over. Second, at his age, he was almost certainly put in a support role, not on the front lines. Third, the Army's record-keeping for individual privates was more about admin than creating a combat diary. And finally, and this is the big one, his unit's whole mission had shifted. It was less about fighting and more about garrison duty and preparing for the resettlement of Loyalists. And that word right there, resettlement, that's the key that unlocks this entire story. See, John Kemp's service wasn't about what he could do on the battlefield. It was all about what he could secure for himself after the war was over. This just reframes his entire motivation, doesn't it? He wasn't enlisting at age 57 to become a war hero. He was making a very calculated choice to secure a future for himself and for his family in a new land, kind of hedging his bets in case his side lost the war. By serving, Kemp earned this really honored title, United Empire Loyalist. And this wasn't just a pat on the back. That UEL designation was basically a ticket to a new life. It granted veterans and their families land and status in what would eventually become Canada. And the rewards were very real. His service got him a huge land grant in what is now Ontario. He received government supplies to help him get started. His status even got him an appointment on the local land board.
I mean, he wasn't just a settler, he was now actively helping to build his new community from the ground up.
This quote just says it all, really. John Kemp's story isn't about battlefield glory, but it represents the quiet, pragmatic dedication of thousands of ordinary people. Their service was an investment in the future, and it laid the actual foundation for new communities and, well, a whole new country. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? The most important stories aren't always the loudest. Sometimes the real history is just waiting to be found, not in the roar of a cannon, but in the quiet, faded ink of a ledger. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.